You might need a brown bag next to you as I give you the details of this story because it might make you want to puke. There are two op-ed headlines in legacy media outlets that honestly make me dizzy with rage and disgust. The first one comes from Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, where he suggests this: Biden-Cheney 2024? No, how about no? I mean, think about that. He's suggesting, why don't we couple an ineffective, feckless president who has failed, who has awful approval numbers, awful. Let's combine him with a war criminal, and maybe Democrats can win in 2024. Like, this is such a bad suggestion that honestly, I think Thomas Friedman is either trolling us or like despises the Democratic Party and is giving them the kind of advice that would ensure their failure. I mean, they're doing fine themselves. They don't need this, but this is just incredible. So what's his argument here? Why would he want Cheney involved? And look, I'm assuming that he's referring to Liz Cheney, not her father. And yeah, Liz Cheney, while some might argue that she maybe doesn't qualify as a war criminal, has been an insane war hawk, insane. I mean, she has dedicated the vast majority of her working days toward pushing the US government to engage in more and more of these endless wars. So she's the kind of person who has absolutely no problem with the war crimes that the United States has engaged in, has carried out, and I have no interest. I don't care if she's part of this select committee investigating January 6th. I don't care what kind of branding exercise she's taking part in. Liz Cheney is Liz Cheney. There ain't any change in who she is and what she really represents. But with that said, let me give you some information. Let me give you what his true argument is. Doesn't get any better. He argues that Israel's new coalition government is a great example of what Democrats can do to win, because he thinks that the coalition government in Israel has really changed the game in the country. Now, of course, that's not true. He writes, it's the most diverse national unity government in Israel's history, one that stretches from Jewish settlers on the right all the way to an Israeli Arab Islamist party and super liberals on the left. Most important, it's holding together, getting stuff done, and muting the hyperpolarization that was making Israel ungovernable. So exactly where is the leftist in the in the Biden-Cheney ticket? Where exactly? Like, where's the leftist in that equation? There is no leftist, of course. And if you take a look at what has transpired in Israel following the formation of this coalition government, nothing's really changed. And I'm keeping it real. Just to give you a quick example, remember there was another flare up in war and violence between Israelis and Palestinians as a result of these Sheikh Jarrah settlements being taken over by Israeli settlers, right? And this is something that Amnesty International, the UN, the international community has condemned. Palestinians are being evicted from their rightful homes. And so did that change under the coalition government? Of course not. Here's a recent headline from the Times of Israel where they write that fresh Sheikh Jarrah eviction threatens to royal capital anew. 11 Palestinians set to be removed by new owner, a Jerusalem city council member. Police have asked to delay the eviction until end of the month. And by the way, just let me reiterate, Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem is considered a flagrant violation of international law. Amnesty International has called it a human rights violation. And Amnesty International also notes this: Israel's policy of settling its civilians in occupied Palestinian territory and displacing the local Palestinian population continues to contravene fundamental rules of international humanitarian law. Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention states, the occupying power shall not deport or transfer parts of its own citizen population into the territory it occupies. It also prohibits individual or mass forcible transfers, as well as deportations of protected persons from occupied territory. Now, all of that was violated under Benjamin Netanyahu, and guess what? It continues to be violated under this so-called coalition government. And look, I give you that information because it's important to know that context to really fully understand how insane Friedman's argument is here. But let's go back to Friedman because his op-ed just gets crazier. He says, is that what America needs in 2024? A ticket of Joe Biden and Liz Cheney? Or Joe Biden and Lisa Murkowski, or Kamala Harris and Mitt Romney, or Stacey Abrams and Liz Cheney. He really likes Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney comes up quite a bit. Or Amy Klobuchar and Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney. I really like Liz Cheney. Can we get Liz Cheney in the ticket, please? Liz Cheney. No, no one's interested in Liz Cheney. Okay, we cannot have it. We cannot have it on a boat. We cannot have it with a goat. Like, we're not interested in Liz Cheney. Democrats are not interested in Liz Cheney, and even Republicans are not interested in Liz Cheney. Her, anti-Trump rhetoric was a massive miscalculation for herself and her political career. The fact that she can get sucked into the Democratic Party as someone who could actually help the party is laughable. And look, for Friedman, this is all about Trump, okay? He writes, to put it differently, this Trump cult version of the GOP is trying to gain power through an election, but is trying to increase its odds of winning by gaming the system in battleground states. America's small d Democrats need to counter those moves and increase their odds of winning. The best way to do that is by creating a broad national unity vehicle that enables more Republicans to leave the Trump cult without having to just become big D Democrats. How about this? How about take a look at the actual legislation, the actual policies that tend to receive bipartisan support? Typically, these are social spending policies that Thomas Friedman, not a big fan of. But he is a big fan of Liz Cheney. So he is going to, like, the New York Times published this. There's an editor at the New York Times who read a draft of this and was like, nailed it, which shows you just how out of touch they are. It is incredible. Now, we're not done yet. We got to move over to the Wall Street Journal, which on the very same day as the New York Times op-ed that I just described, decided to publish this doozy. Let's look at this headline. Hillary Clinton's 2024 election comeback. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have become unpopular. It may be time for a change candidate. And I'll give you a little info later on the individuals who wrote this op-ed. There's a huge conflict of interest. But before I get to that, a few excerpts. She, meaning Hillary, already in an advantageous position to become the 2024 Democratic nominee. She is an experienced national figure who is younger than Mr. Biden and can offer a different approach from the disorganized and unpopular one the party is currently taking. Oh, she can offer a different approach. Fascinating. What would her different approach be? Literally in the same op-ed they write, if Democrats lose control of Congress in 2022, Mrs. Clinton can use the party's loss as a basis to run for president again, enabling her to claim the title of change candidate. Based on her latest public statements, it's clear that Mrs. Clinton not only recognizes her position as a potential frontrunner, but also is setting up a process to help her decide whether or not to run for president again. She recently warned of the electoral consequences in the 2022 election if the Democratic Party, this is the important part, continues to align itself with its progressive wing and urged Democrats to reject far left positions that isolate key segments of the electorate. So where in the equation did the writers see Hillary Clinton as a change candidate? Like, how exactly is she a change candidate when she advocates for the same failed strategies for the Democratic Party? Listen, voters are not interested in Republican light. They're not. They're not interested in Republican light, especially when they can just vote for the Republican candidate. They're not interested. Look, if you want to make an argument that some of the rhetoric from the left, whether it be in regard to crime or whatever, is not popular, maybe you can make that argument. But it's interesting because they shy away from giving any data, any polling in regard to social spending that the vast majority of Americans approve, including Republican voters. To say that this country is super right wing is ridiculous when you have so much data showing you the opposite when it comes to bread and butter issues. But they don't want to talk about that. And just to remind you all of what the authors here are talking about, here's Hillary Clinton displaying just how much of a change candidate she would be.
I think that it is a time for some careful thinking about what wins elections, and not just in deep blue districts where a Democrat and a liberal Democrat or so-called progressive Democrat is going to win. First of all, we don't know what the state of the map is going to be after all of the redistricting. It appears as though the Republicans in a number of states are doing their best to eliminate as many seats that Democrats can be competitive in. And so we've got to be very clear-eyed about what it's going to take to hold the House and the Senate in 2022 and to win the Electoral College, because also Republicans are doing everything they can to create an environment in which winning the Electoral College, even narrowly the way Joe Biden did, will be out of reach for a Democrat. So I understand why people want to argue for their priorities. That's what they believe they were elected to do. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to get done if you don't have a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate. And our majority comes from people who win in much more difficult districts. And our majority in the Senate comes from people who can win in not just blue states and hold those wins, as we saw didn't happen in Virginia, but can win in more purplish states.
I just want people like Hillary Clinton and the individuals who have written these awful op-eds to answer one question, just one. Why is it that all of these Democratic politicians lean on messaging in regard to the social safety net, materially improving Americans' lives, fixing our broken healthcare system? Why do they talk about those bread and butter issues when they're campaigning if those are the progressive issues that are unpopular, if those are the issues that don't tend to win? Why is it that that kind of messaging somehow worked with people like President Donald Trump? I know that they love to say that, no, you guys, they didn't support Trump because of his faux economic populism. They supported Trump because everyone who voted for Trump's racist. They love to just lean on that argument. But remember, the state of Florida voted for Obama, not once, but twice. So to just say like they're all racist and that's what explains it, I think is lazy, but it's intentionally meant to hide the fact that the very political issues that don't serve their corporate donors happen to be the very political issues that actually sit very well with the electorate, Democrats and Republicans alike. And finally, as I promised, I wanted to give you some information on the individuals who wrote this. One of the individuals in particular, his name is Douglas Schoen. Who is Douglas Schoen? Little conflict of interest here. He is the founder and partner in Schoen Cooperman Research, a polling and consulting firm whose past clients include Bill Clinton and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Oh, that's great. Okay, cool. No interest in hearing what he thinks or reading what he thinks. It is a joke that the Wall Street Journal just willy-nilly published this guy's opinion, which is so inaccurate, even considering that massive conflict of interest. At least they disclosed it at the very bottom of the article. But maybe we should hear from actual, I would love for them to publish op-eds written by actual voters. No political operatives, no one, running a lobbying firm. I just want to hear from actual voters. I think that would maybe inform the political parties a little better, no? But of course, they know what voters want. They use the right messaging when they're campaigning, but then they abandon those issues the second they're voted into positions of power. That's just the reality.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.